Okay, so this is the demonstration for how to add shading to a character. As you can see, what I've done is added a new layer called light source, and now I'm going to use the line tool to basically add in some semi-transparent strokes to say where the light is hitting. These are eventually going to get erased, so don't worry about them kind of colliding with your figure. It's basically just to see where the light is going to hit, so you'll have a reference. Now, over top of the flat color layer, you're going to put a layer called shadow. I've selected a glaze brush to lay in my base shadows and taken a sample of the base tone of the shirt and then darkened it for my base shadow. Now I'm just kind of loosely adding in shadow opposite of where the light source would be in the folds. Just kind of filling in areas. The other good thing about putting the shadows on the same layer is that you can erase away if you've made an error. So I'm filling this in dark, and now I'm going to select a liner brush to put in deeper shadows, almost going to black but not quite there, concentrating on where the folds hit and where the deepest shadows would be away from the light source. I'm putting in some shadows in the crease where the two pieces of material would join, like in the seam, and darkening the inside of the cuff. And you can just kind of put your folds in wherever they would kind of go around your form. So now I'm making a new layer for highlights, and I actually put the highlight layer on top of everything. And the reason that I do this is because I don't want lines getting in the way of me putting in highlights if the light is going to be really extreme. So I've got the glaze brush again, and now I'm putting in broad highlights, both across the front of the tunic and on the sleeve. Now I'm swapping to white and a liner brush to get in more extreme highlights where the light is really hitting strongly. And I'm just cleaning up some of my line work that kind of goes out past things. See, the great thing of having your line work on a different layer and your shadow on a different layer, if you overlap and make a mess, you can go back and clean it up. So now I'm beginning the process of getting the skin on the face shaded. So I've got my facial reference, and I'm going to use the water dropper tool to pull samples of the shadow first. So I'm working on the shadow layer, and I've got the glaze brush again, which you do not have to use, but you can try out different brushes here. I just like the glaze brush because it's transparent and it works for me. So I'm just laying in some broad shadows, and the reason that I have the hair on a whole separate layer so you can shadow right underneath it and you're not going to run into the edge of the hair. So I'm just putting in shadows wherever kind of opposite the light source. You can also use your reference to determine where the shadow should lie, because that'll have shadows on it as well. So I'm just going with a darker value now to lay in more extreme shadows, still using the same brush but a smaller tip, and using the blender to kind of blend it out as I go. I'm putting in more detailed shadow work, underneath the lip and everything. So now I'm going to put in the whites of the eyes on the flat color layer, as well as some tonality of the actual irises of the eyes. This is all on the flat color layer, not on the shadow layer. And I'm going to put in a pink for his lips right there on the flat color layer. Now I'm moving back to the shadow layer to add shadows and definition to the lips, using a little bit of a darker shade of that same kind of pink that I took a sample of. And I'm now working in blacks to kind of get some more details in the eyes and in the eyebrows and the nostril here. And around the edge of the ear and the edge of the jawline. Now I'm going up to the highlight layer, and I'm going to sample his skin tone first, using a broad brush to put in large areas of highlight, opposite the light source, or at the light source. And looking at that, it's a little bit too dark, so I'm going to now put in brighter highlights to give the face more three-dimensional push, focusing on where I think the light would hit, based on where I put in my light source lines. I'm putting a highlight on the jaw, lips, using a liner brush to put in finer details, shines in the eyes. Alright, so now I'm going to the hair flat layer, and I'm putting in another layer on top of that, calling it hair shadows. Working once again with my glazed brush, I'm going to go ahead and put in some nice dark shadows through the hair, and I'm actually going to take a sample of his highlight on his hair to start messing with the highlights. Now, I'm once again over top of everything, so I know that I'm going to be covering up some of my line work, but it really works for the hair because we wouldn't want any black hair lines showing through the highlights. Swapping to a liner brush for brighter highlights.